Hola chicos y bienvenidos. This is a video that I've created for you guys to go over this grammatical concept called los pronombres relativos. The thing about this is when in Spanish we have kind of complicated phrases or terms that we use for certain things. Relative pronouns sounds kind of complicated, but in reality it's a pretty simple idea. So, en este video vamos a aprender un poquito de los pronombres relativos. Okay, so we're going to talk about what a relative pronoun is and how we use it in Spanish. So, básicamente, pronombres relativos, what do they do? What they do is they connect two separate thoughts, okay, two separate things, and put them into one using a relative pronoun. So when you think relative, you can think something that connects, right? A relationship. It connects two things, okay? So here I have two statements, okay? Tengo Señor Siegel enseña español, okay? Then the second thing I said is Señor Siegel es entrenador de tenis, okay? So we have two separate things. Señor Siegel, he teaches Spanish, and he's a tennis coach. So how do we combine Señor Siegel enseña español and Señor Siegel es entrenador de tenis? I want to make one statement. Instead of saying these two separate things, I want to put them together into one. So an example of a relative pronoun is what we have in English called who or whom, right, is quién. Okay, quién. So this is the final sentence. I use quién to connect the two things. I say, Señor Siegel, quien enseña español, es entrenador de tenis. Everyone see? So again, Señor Siegel, who teaches Spanish, is a tennis coach. Señor Siegel, quien enseña español, es entrenador de tenis. Okay? Makes sense? So let's get into the possibilities. Okay? The way that we use estos pronombres. There are only, really, three options. Okay? There are only three options when it comes to relative pronouns in Spanish, and that's a great thing. They are que, right? This is something that we've seen before. It can mean that, which, or who. Okay? So look what I've done here. I crossed out the accent. Why? Because the only way you would use que with an accent is if it were a question. Okay? However, if we're using it as a relative pronoun, the only way we use it is without the accent que. Okay, means that, which, or who. Then we have quién. Okay, again, why doesn't it have an accent? Because quién with an accent would mean that we're asking a question. Okay, and that's not what we're doing here. We're not asking a question. We're saying quién as who, whom, or that. Okay, and then the plural of quién is quiénes. Then, lo que. Okay, this is probably one that we've heard before, but we might not have talked about often. Lo que is what, right? What, as in stuff, right? The stuff, you can think of it as lo que, the stuff, right? So, again, it's not like que. So if I say, we're at a restaurant, I'm asking you, ¿qué quieres? What do you want, right? You would never respond saying, que quiero es una ensalada, right? The more correct way, or the really only way you would express that thought, what I want, would be lo que quiero. Lo que quiero es una ensalada. Okay, so we have these tres opciones. Que, quién, quiénes if it's plural, lo que. Okay, so we'll keep going. Let's do kind of specific examples here. Que, that, which, or who. Okay, so what I'm doing here is, okay, I'm taking again two thoughts and making them one. So the girl studying is Sofia. Okay, notice in English there's no that here. Okay, we don't say the girl that is studying. Okay, is Sofia. We could say the girl studying is Sofia. So we have two things. Again, it's a girl, and she's the girl Sofia, and she is studying, right? In Spanish, you need the that. And how do we say that? It's que, right? So in order to say the girl that is studying, okay, the girl studying is Sofia, I'd say la chica que que estudia, right? It's very literal here. The girl that studies, right, is Sofía. Okay? Notice I don't have here estudiando or está estudiando. The present tense can suffice here. So, la chica que está estudiando or la chica que estudia es Sofía. The next one. Here is the pen my professor gave to me. Aquí está el bolígrafo that. Again, in English we can just say the pen my professor gave to me, but we can say here in Spanish what we need to say is que. So aquí está el bolígrafo que mi profesor me dio. Right? That my teacher gave to me. That's que. That, which, or who. Then we have quién. Alright, so let's start talking now about quién and quiénes. Okay? Which mean in Spanish who, whom, or that. Okay? So one thing to remember with quién and quiénes is that it only applies to people. Okay, it only applies to people. So you can only use quién in situations where you would say who, right? So in English we might say incorrectly that the pencil who is yellow writes often, right? A pencil is not a person, obviously. So we can't use quién in that situation either. We have to use que, but we would use quién and quiénes in situations where we have people. So the examples that I give here show that quién often appears after a preposition. So words like de and a, right? So to whom or of whom. I think the idea of whom is one that we don't really think about much in English and that we use incorrectly often. So let's look at these two examples. First one is Señor Siegel the teacher of whom you're talking about, right? So we know that in English if we say who are you talking about or who is the teacher who you're talking about is most likely where we want whom. Okay, so this is the first example. Is Señor Siegel the teacher of whom you're talking, right? Or of whom you're talking about, right? Of whom you're talking is correct, right? So this is the question. ¿Es Señor Siegel el profesor de quien hablas? ¿Es Señor Siegel el profesor de quien hablas? Right? Is Mr. Siegel the one that you're talking about? Okay. Of whom you are talking? Okay. The second example. Ethan and Victoria, comma, whom I met in September, are my students. Right? I need to make sure I change that. Subject-verb agreement. Ethan and Victoria, comma. Okay. Notice we have the comma here. That's really important. Okay. If we have the comma, it means that we're separating this thought and we're going to introduce quién, right? That's something that is normally a pretty good way to introduce quién. So I'm going to highlight these commas because they're often used with quién. Okay, so again, Ethan and Victoria, whom I met in September, are my students. Right? So this is a bit complicated when we put it into Spanish. We say Ethan y Victoria, a quienes, right? We need the a, right? We need the a because in Spanish it's called the a personal. So anytime we're talking about meeting someone, seeing someone, we need the a. So Ethan y Victoria, a quienes. And why is it quienes? Because it's two people. A quienes conocí en septiembre. Okay, again I need to change this. Son mis estudiantes. Okay? A quienes conocí en septiembre son mis estudiantes. Okay? Esto es muy importante. So again, quién, who, whom, that. Okay? Sometimes in Spanish you can change. You can use both quién and que, right? So if we're talking about, again, Señor Siegel es el, so if we go back to that first example, we could use quién here, right? Or I could say Señor Siegel es un profesor que también es entrenador de tenis. You could say que there as well. So just to make sure, if we're dealing with people, okay, or quién rather only applies to people, right? So is Señor Siegel the teacher of whom you're talking? ¿Es Señor Siegel el profesor de quien hablas? right? Ethan and Victoria, comma, whom I met in September are my students. Ethan y Victoria, again, a quienes, because it's they, right? Conocí en septiembre son mis estudiantes. So if I were just talking about Victoria, I would say what? Victoria, a quien conocí en septiembre, es mi estudiante. Okay, so let's go to the last option here, lo que. Okay, this is really important. It's used all the time. It literally means, when we translate it, it's that which, but we're talking about stuff, right? The stuff. So what I want to say, for example, is this. The stuff I don't like, or what I don't like about Flint Hill, is the dress code, right? You would not say que in this context, right? When we're saying the stuff, again, the things, the overall idea, the stuff that I don't like is lo que, right? So I'd say, bueno, lo que no me gusta de FHS es el atuendo apropiado, okay? Dress code. Lo que no me gusta, the stuff I don't like, okay? Same thing. What I eat for breakfast, okay? Lo que yo como por el desayuno, okay? Es el cereal, okay? Es el cereal, okay? Por el desayuno, yo como cereal. Okay, lo que yo como, that which, what I eat. Okay, so in review, just to kind of hacer un repaso de esto, what is a relative pronoun? It's basically something that we use to link, okay, two ideas and put them into one, right? So if I had these two to start, Señor Siegel enseña español. Señor Siegel es entrenador de tenis. Right? Señor Siegel, again we're using quien here, who teaches Spanish, quien enseña español, es entrenador de tenis. Okay? We went over the three options here. Que, quien es, quien, right? And lo que. Que, that. Okay? Notice here that we can use que with people, right? Can use que with people, right? So the girl studying is Sofía, la chica que estudia, right? It's like that in Spanish. If I wanted to change this, how could I? I could say, la chica quien estudia es Sofía, right? But often that's with the commas, okay? If we separate it. But if there's no comma, la chica que estudia es Sofía. Here is the pen my professor gave to me, right? And so, again, you can't say who here, or whom, because the pen is not a person, right? You can't say the pen who my professor gave. No. The pen that my professor gave to me. So I'd say, aquí está el bolígrafo que mi profesor me dio. Okay, que, that, which, or who sometimes. Then quien. Quien is only used with people. Again, you can't say the pen who was given to me, or the pen who is blue, right? It doesn't make sense. It's got to be with people. So I took these ideas. Is Señor Siegel the teacher of whom you're talking? Es Señor Siegel el profesor de quien hablas? In a weird way, when we study Spanish, it makes our English better, right? I don't know how many of us would say, is Señor Siegel the teacher of whom you're talking? Right? In Spanish, it almost forces us to think about our own grammar. Es Señor Siegel el profesor de quien hablas? Of whom? Remember, if we have a or de, right? Quien often follows. Ethan and Victoria, whom I met. Right? Remember, we need the quien and a before the quien. In September are my students. I made this singular and I said Victoria, a quien conocí en septiembre, es mi estudiante. Y finalmente, lo que, the stuff. Right? Again, if you want to say what I don't like, or what the things that I enjoy, or what annoys me, the stuff that annoys me. Right? So, for example, what I don't like about Flint Hill, lo que no me gusta es el atuendo apropiado. Stuff I eat for breakfast. Lo que yo como por el desayuno es el cereal. Okay? So, these are relative pronouns. I hope it makes sense. And please do the activity that is attached with this. And adios.